Hey guys, Cutterup Rob here. I'm just going to do a little overview of the steps or the things that you have to do to a common rail block, whether it be a 5.9 block or a 6.7 block, to put a P-pump timing case on and make it work. So yeah, let's get at it and I'll show you some stuff. Not getting too into actually doing it in the video. Being I don't have one to do right at the moment, but I just, guys were asking about it, so I thought I'd just give a quick rundown kind of on what it takes to do it so that I have some content out there for that. So this block here, this is a 12 valve block. So if we take this gasket, this is the gasket, which I don't actually use, but we actually use case sealant to hold all this stuff together. Find that you don't have issues if you use case sealant, but I just put a couple bolts in. Just put a couple bolts in here, and just gasket wants to walk around. I mean, it's hard to hold it all in one spot here. So you can see that this one gasket all the bolt holes line up in there. So the issue is doing a, let's say, common rail block, whether it be a 5.9 or a 6.7, this is the same, you'll have the same issues. What you got to do is, one, you have to lose this dowel pin and this dowel pin. You're going to have to, the way that I do it, I actually make a sleeve and I drill and tap. But what we'll do is, now, that being said, I suppose, you can buy a timing case to do this with. The bolt's right on there, moves the pump over. You don't have to do any modifications as far as that type of stuff goes. But they're pretty expensive. I want to say they're between $1,700 and $2,200 US for the timing case. And for what I'm doing, I don't really want to spend that much money for doing it when I have basically everything here that I can make it work. Done it quite a few times now. But you can see, so these dowels, so on the 12 valve block, your dowels are like over here, right? So what you have to do is you have to remove these. And this is a block that's machined ready to go, so I don't want to screw around with it. But if you look, put a couple of these bolts back in here. So some of the bolts do line up in their original homes, which is handy for us because that means that you don't have to change everything. But you do have to do some modifications. It's not hard to do the modifications, but don't get me wrong, you need to be handy as far as that goes. You're not, you have to be able to drill and tap and be able to drill and tap straight to be able to do it. So here you can see, obviously where I have the bolts, the holes are lined up in there. Where I have the holes, or the bolts in there, those holes are lined up. But up here you can see these two holes don't line up. And then where your dowel and there's another bolt, these ones, there's nothing there. These ones are lined up. There again, nothing in that one. Nothing in that one. And then your very bottom ones, there again, obviously don't line up. And then this one is like, kind of like half across. So what I do is the spots where the bolts don't line up, what I do is you take a bolt. I just use a grade 5 8mm bolt. I put red Loctite on it. Make sure your hole is good and clean. And in the holes that you have to do it in, so obviously you can mark it with the gasket if you want, but what you do is where the holes that you need to cap off so that you can drill, and I do these ones too just because what I do is I drive the bolt in there, bottom it out in the bottom with red Loctite on it, clean hole, and then do that to all the ones that you need to do it to, and then I grind them flat. And then when you go to drill your new holes, like on this one here where it's like part of the bolt comes across, you can drill half in the block and half in the bolt. Now granted, don't get me wrong, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's, you know, you can do it with a hand, you can do it with a cordless drill. I have done it with a cordless drill. Now granted, now I have equipment to do it that I don't need to use a cordless drill, but the first two I did it with a cordless drill. You just have to take your time, small drill it to start with to get yourself a nice pilot hole where you want it, make sure everything's perfect, and then you can do it. So like I said, you know, where your dowels go, you could drill holes in dowels. Personally, I drill the hole and then I build, you know, and then you have a spacer, basically the bolt goes through that is perfect size, and then tighten it down. That's how I do it. And that's the engine that's going back into the race truck. That's how that one is done. And I haven't had an issue with that part of it anyway. If I could keep, you know, if the oil pump wouldn't have had an issue, life would have been good. But you know, if it was easy, everybody'd do it. So here's the engine that's for the race truck, or what I call the race truck. I don't ever seem to go racing in it, but that's just because I got too many other things to do. But so you can see the timing case on there, and this is a 6/7 block. This is a 6/7 block that we've sleeved down to a 5/9 bore, and you know, you can see the receiver grooves for the fire rings. So something that you have to do, you can see here on the block, is for some reason, not all of them you have to, but some of them you do. You have to shave this down a little bit. I actually shaved it a little bit down a long time ago. And then there's nowhere for your P-pump bracket, so you have to mount, or this is how I mounted it. I mounted my P-pump bracket to here. I just built a little bracket that just bolts in, and that worked perfect. You have to have your feed has to come out, so this is where my oil pressure sensor goes, and then that's my feed for my P-pump is right here. So you need a different line because there's no, I guess you probably could drill a hole there and tap it if you wanted to, but hole's already there. So so some of the other things you have to do, so like I said, 12 valve pistons. I don't have a huge camshaft in this thing, so that's why there's no valve pockets in it. It just has a stage 4 Colt cam in it. Yeah, so if you were going to do a 6/7, something you would have to do is, if you're going to use a 6/7 crankshaft, you would have to change this gear because it's helical cut. So the 12 valves are helical cut, and then the common rails are straight cut. So let's see if I had a gear there. I'll show in the video later the difference in the crankshaft, but that's not that big of a deal. You can pull that on and off. If you have a decent puller, or you can have a machine shop do it for you. One thing that you do have to do is you have to modify an oil pump. So you have to do a hybrid between the two, and And this is actually the new oil pump that I put together for it, and I haven't welded it yet. But so what you have to do is you need this housing, or this is how I've done it. You need this housing off of a common rail, but you need the helical cut gears. So what happened on my last engine, or on that engine, is this gear here actually spun on the shaft that comes through, which I've never seen before, but yeah, it's one of those things, I guess. Because the side that I pressed on and off was this side, and it was perfect. So I've already welded the back side of this one, and I got to straighten this up in a couple spots and get some clearances set before I weld it. The rest of it, I want to make sure everything's good. And then I'm going to weld this, and then I'm also going to weld this shaft to the casing, or pin it. I haven't quite decided yet, so that shaft can't move either, because I want to make sure that this one is good. We don't want to have another oil pump failure. So you have to do that to an oil pump to make it work. Otherwise it doesn't fit. So now next step that you have to do, so let me roll, I guess it doesn't matter. So the oil squirters on a common rail block, or a 6/7 block, they bolt in, and same with the common rail block, they bolt in. Those oil squirters. So that's the one that goes, so if you're using a 6/7 block, these are metal ones, and I like the metal ones, but they're not that easy to get. They came out of the early 5.9s, and you could get them. And they, I personally like those ones better, but personal preference. These bolt in. So in the 6/7, they don't have a plug like they do on the 5.9 common rail or on a 12 valve. Guess there again, oh, that engine has a crank in it. So this one's a 5.9. Yeah, it's a 5.9. So you can see in there where that oil squirter bolts in on the left hand side. You can see the two holes, and then if you look down, you can see the little blue plug. So that blue plug on a 12 valve, it doesn't have this over here. It just uses that blue plug, which isn't blue. It's not actually a plug on a 12 valve. That's where the oil squirter goes. So on the common rail 5.9, it has both. So you can add extra oiling, providing you have the oil capacity. But on the common rail, it doesn't have the boss drilled for the oil squirter. So what you need to do is so that being in there, you could, I guess, drill the block, but it's auto screwing around and drill the block. So what I do is, so this is a common rail piston. This is a 325 horse 5.9 piston, but it's exactly the same on the backside. Bore is different, but so you can see here where this indentation's been cut out, and that's actually so when the piston comes down, the piston doesn't hit it, because so here's the 12 valve one, and it doesn't have that because usually the oil squirter would be coming in here, right? So what I do is I put the piston in the piston vise, and you actually cut that groove so that when the oil squirter comes there, it doesn't hit it. Now, the only thing is, and what I do, and it probably work perfect, like you never have an issue, but what I do is I actually bend this over a little, so I heat it and bend it over, but you got to be super careful doing that, because if you break it, then you won't have an oil squirter and you won't have an engine running for very long, because they rely very heavily on oil squirters. But you need to do that to make pistons, the pistons work in there. So if you were doing a P-pump 6/7 with a 6/7 head, obviously you wouldn't need to worry about that because you'd already be running the right pistons for it. But if you're going to a 12 valve 5.9 bore, you have to have that relief in there. And like I said, I always give these a twist so that the angle of the oil isn't like, it's not coming in like this, it's coming in like this. So that's that anyway. So as far as pistons go, the oil pump, what else do we need to talk about here? Crankshaft gears. Perfect. So just to give you guys a reference, this crank here, which is a 5.9 crankshaft, but you can see there it's a straight cut gear. So the common rail is the same as that, or the 6.7. So all the common rails are that way, 5.9, 6.7. And then on this one, it's a helical cut. So if you're going to use a 6.7 crankshaft, you need to have one of these gears and put it on here. And there's no difference other than one's helical cut, one's straight cut. Other than that, there's no difference. But you do need to do that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I can think of. It was a little while ago since the last time I've done one in entirety. Yeah, and you can see the engine mounts for the first gen are already mounted on there. Oh, actually something else that you need to do. Let me roll this back over again. So, and then the last thing is if you look here, I don't have, oh yeah, there's a clean oil pan right there. So this is a 12 valve oil pan. Make sure it's clean. So when you do this, a common rail block, the oil pan bolt holes are not the same. So you can see the front ones line up. I don't have the pan just perfectly square, but they don't line up over here. So what you have to do, or what I did, there's more than one option. If you can weld aluminum, you could graft two of these timing cases together to make that work. And I was actually thinking about trying that because I do have a couple cases that are broken, 12 valve and common rail ones. But what I did was I had a 12 valve pan that was, well, this one's crunched in pretty good, but I had one that was all caved in, so it was no good. What I did was I took that one and I cut the front off and I grafted it to the front, or to the back of a common rail block. Yeah, so you can see here, I haven't cleaned it yet to put it back on, but so that's the back half of a common rail oil pan, and then the front half of a 12 valve one, and then I just grafted it together. And it works perfect. I didn't have any issue. I didn't have any issues as far as that goes. There again, pretty easy to weld. You can weld with a MIG welder. You know, it's just something that you have to do. And then if you want all the bolt holes to line up, that is something else that you need to do, is you need to have the rear engine housing for a common rail, because they are different. They have this O-ring in the back for the camshaft, and a couple holes don't line up. You know, if you're making any amount of power, you want to make sure you got all the bolts in there and stuff. But so other than that, that's just kind of a quick rundown of, you know, what it takes to put to use a common rail block with a P-pump the easy way, I guess you would say, or the cheap way maybe. I guess the cheap way. The easy way would be to buy the case to do it. Then you don't have to do as much modification. But a bunch of the stuff you still have to do anyway. It's just literally the timing case. So yeah, that's that one for today anyway. Not a super long video, but just hopefully there's some information there. If you guys got any questions, comments, hit me up down below. And yeah, have a good one, guys. Take it easy.